What if every failed attempt was actually a building of a brand new toolkit? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the Northwoods, talking about how to make your life better one small step at a time. We've been talking about bouncing back or bouncing forward from disappointment. The first one in the series was talking about something public in front of everybody. The second one was talking about a private loss where you're trying something. And it might be your budget. It might be a failed relationship. It might be trying to lose weight. And I framed it in terms of my weight loss, a battle that I've had my whole life. And we're going to talk about building a toolkit that allows you to finally succeed at something that maybe has not worked for a really long time. If you think about it, that every time you fail at something and you sort of lament, oh, why can't I ever make this work? And what if you thought of it in a different way, that it's not a loss or even wasted effort, but instead it is you adding another tool to your toolkit so that you can eventually succeed because you just learned something new, either about yourself or about the topic you're trying to fix. You know, for decades and decades, and I won't tell you how many decades they are, I have tried to lose weight. Every plan, every program, every book that was out there, and I tried to do this, and each time it just didn't work. In fact, at the point of right at around 2020, I just decided I'm giving up. I have tried this too many times. I have failed too many times. I'm just giving up. I'm over it. This is just who Jill is right now. And I tried Weight Watchers. I hired a trainer. Like I said, I read every book there was. But you know what? When you look back at it, what it really was is from Weight Watchers, I got a really good food framework, practical understanding how to think about food, how to track what you're eating, how to record what it is you're eating and evaluate what it is. I also got a way that I can internalize what's going on with me. How do certain foods make me feel? So I didn't even need the app or the program anymore. I owned it now inside of me. I hired a trainer. And the trainer helped me to lose a significant amount of weight. And what she gave me was basically exercise, math, fitness, science, how the body burns calories, how muscles are little factories, and they burn fat even when you're just sitting there watching TV. If you get more muscles, you will burn more fat and it'll keep your metabolism active. She gave me a framework. And like I said, I still use it today and I still see her today as my fitness trainer. And instead of me looking at basically every attempt that I did to lose weight being one bad result after another, I was collecting information. I was starting to understand what conditions made it harder for me to stay consistent, what triggers spiraled me into a bad direction, what interrupted me in success, but also what worked, where did I respond, where was I able to fit things together. And I just never saw the toolkit. I just saw it basically as a record of one failure after another. And maybe both were right, but one is actually something that helped me and is helping me today get over, accomplish the things I want to accomplish. So this brings us essentially to where we were in the pandemic. And when that first kicked in, the very first thing I did is I went and bought the materials to make ice cream. I make ice cream. And I thought, oh, I should buy a video game too. And then suddenly that night, I'm sitting there looking at video games and eating my ice cream. And I thought, is this really the path you want to take right now? You just want to go back on everything you learned and everything that you've done. I used to be addicted to video games and I never would get anything accomplished in my life. And that's what you're going to do right now? And suddenly I became a little afraid of getting stuck back where I was back in like the 2000 and 2010s. And then I started noticing that the people who were most vulnerable to getting sick with COVID were the people who were not healthy. I was overweight by a lot. I had diabetes at that particular point. And when you looked at what was being said, people in my condition were not faring very well with this. Well, I don't understand to this time why we weren't talking about getting healthier. If we knew that sickly people were getting sicker, let's start getting healthy. And so that's what I did. I really had some serious thoughts about myself here, and I decided that I had to get healthy. This was about survival. And even not just COVID. I am going to make myself very, very sick. This is a very dangerous situation to be in, regardless of what happens. Wouldn't you like to get out of that situation? And I started pulling out every piece of knowledge I had, every food framework, everything I learned about food. That's what led me to the Monjero YouTube channel path, because everything that I learned about fitness and food and eating healthy, I pulled out. And even so I started eating reasonable amount of calories. I exercised every day. I did resistance training 3 times a week. And I started eating food that was real food. If you take a look like at a chocolate chip cookie, it's flour, it's sugar, it's chocolate chips. You know what it is, right? If you look at an Oreo cookie, what is even in that? Does any of that come from a farm? And I started changing my lifestyle around so that what I would eat would actually be food that I could identify in a farm. I'd look at the label, and if it read like a chemistry label, I wouldn't eat that. If it looked like actual food that, like I said, I could find on a farm, I was more likely to eat it. And I got out of eating basically highly processed foods. And I put all of that into action. Not only that, I started becoming very effectual in my life because I started having better tools. My Mac with all its productivity tools. I have my iPhone that has all my reminders and nudges here and there. I started at that point taking everything I had, pulling it in together to make myself successful. Everything I learned about myself and put it into action. Now, here was the thing about it is in the 3 pounds basically of the pandemic, or 3 years of the pandemic, I lost 16 pounds. That's not a lot. That was the same diet that I had actually lost 70 pounds with when I was younger in my life, the same exact diet. And now, instead of losing 70 pounds in about that time frame, so it took me 2 years to lose 70 pounds. Now at 3 years, I lost 16. I don't know what happened. I was doing everything that was correct. And, like I said, 16 pounds is not nothing. I also dropped my blood sugar by 50. So it was getting better, but something was missing and something wasn't very right. And so at that particular point, I decided to talk to my doctor about it. And I had been avoiding the doctor. Essentially, the plan that I was making in my head was, I'm not going back to the doctor until I have lost the weight and I'm no longer diabetic. And I got stuck. And so instead, I started realizing the doctor was there to help me, And now he wanted me to get bariatric surgery. I had done research and I was looking to do Monjero. That's what I asked him for. So Monjero was a type 2 diabetes drug. Since I was diabetic at this point, I also needed diabetes medication. And it has been used to successfully help people lose weight. And it doesn't work straight out of willpower and food plans. People, if you listen to people on the internet, they'll say, oh, well, you're just starving yourself to death because it just makes you not want to eat food. That's not it at all. I ate very healthy while I was on Monjero, and I ate just fine. It wasn't until I got to the higher doses that I started struggling with no appetite at all. And that's when I decided it was time to come off. But I was able to take then all the lessons that I had learned about losing weight, wrap it up into this medication, which was now allowing me to metabolize food properly instead of storing. What happens when you get diabetic and insulin resistant? You just store fat. And there's nothing you can do. You eat less, you store fat. You eat more, you store fat. I just was in a pickle. My blood sugar would go up if I starved myself, and my blood sugar would go up if I fed myself. I just couldn't even get anything to work right at that point. Now that I was on this drug, my metabolism started working again. And in about 16 months, I lost 80 pounds. I was not just letting the drug work. You'll hear a lot of people on the internet, oh, just let the drug work. It'll take care of it. It won't. There are a lot of people who don't lose weight on Monjero because they don't do all the things. Instead, I did all the things. I was eating healthy. I was getting fiber, protein. I was having a low-carb diet. I was getting all my exercise in. I was drinking all the water. I was doing resistance training. So not only did I lose 80 pounds, but I put on 12 pounds of muscle. And all my stats then came back into this. I used, like I said, every piece of knowledge I had. So then my blood sugar normalized, healthy range. My cholesterol, healthy range. My blood pressure, healthy range. And every stat that was going in the wrong direction now is fine. And I did all that with taking this medication and then taking all my years of knowledge, self-knowledge, exercise knowledge, food knowledge, put it all together. And now I am now off the medication entirely. I work really hard on this. This doesn't mean that it's over for me. I still have about 25 pounds to lose, but I'm going to do it small steps at a time. And I'm going to keep this weight off by knowing myself, knowing my fitness habits, my food self-awareness, all the different things. And you know what? It's working. I don't have cravings. I don't go crazy at the grocery store. Like I said, I was at a cafeteria last week for training for work. I had every food on the planet available to me. It was available all the time. This cafeteria was amazing at this training center I was at. There was hot cocoa and desserts. And you know what? I stayed in control. I kept by my principles and I stayed in control during this training, and I was just fine. So it's actually working right now. And we have to realize what it looks like when it actually something is working. What it feels like, you might think, to come over the finish line. But the truth of it is there is no finish line, is that you have to keep putting in work. If you're on a budget and budget is your struggle and spending money is too much of your struggle, you're always going to have to work at keeping on that budget. If losing weight was your issue, now the hardest part of this comes in, me keeping the weight off. This isn't the easy part. This isn't me being finished. This is me going into another phase. Or if you're in a bad relationship and you just are struggling in the relationship all over and over again, you're not done. You're going to have to keep working at that relationship and identifying when things go off the rail earlier. But what you've done in all of this is now that you're building a toolkit all along. I call it iterations. I always do iterations of things. I try something and then I try something similar and then I try something similar. You're going to keep going at this. You're going to keep moving on. And even if at this point you're not succeeding, you're going to take and not restart from the beginning, but you are going to figure yourself out, figure out your patterns, what works, what doesn't work, what makes things easy to sustain and not easy to sustain. And you're building a toolkit. And instead of feeling like you've repeatedly failed, you're now looking at this and saying that you gained real knowledge, that you gained self-awareness, that you gained different skills and tools and maybe even things that your phone can do to help you out. So even if you're trying, for sobriety and you tried and tried again, eventually you're going to figure out what triggers you, what you can do to support yourself. And that's not a failure, it's research. Maybe you're looking at financial stability where every budget you had fell apart. You will eventually figure out how it is you can maintain a budget and keep from wasting money on things you're not supposed to be buying. That's information that you're going to have. If you have a bad relationship, you're going to recognize faster when things are going into a bad pattern before things go too far. You're going to understand deeper than you ever did before. And the question is that you have to ask yourself is not the old question you asked yourself, which is, why do I keep failing at this? Instead, you're going to start asking questions. What's the missing piece here? What can I do to make this better? Or what kind of support do I need that I'm just not currently getting? In my particular case, I needed a medication. I needed a medication that would make my body actually respond properly. And that worked. And so I was able to take all the tools that I had and lose a lot of weight and get a lot healthier. But maybe in your case, you're looking at a therapist, a financial advisor, some kind of a support system that's there. Because help and asking for help is not cheating. It's about completing your toolkit with every tool you need. So if you bring it back down, to something very concrete in all this, if you're in a long battle and you're looking to try to finally win something that has not won yet, first of all, you have to understand, you don't throw away every idea that you learned or what you think didn't work. Instead, you're going to extract out every good idea out of it. Maybe the whole diet didn't work, but this one thing worked out really well for me. Maybe this budget thing didn't work, but this particular aspect of automatically saving money, that was great. That really helped me every time. Every failed attempt contains information. and you write it down. What worked, even partially, what didn't work, what did you learn about yourself, what would you do differently the next time? There's your toolkit. And then you start iterating. You start on your next path with one small step based on what you just learned. If you don't learn anything from what you did in the past, then everything is a waste. But if you start extracting lessons out of everything you do, nothing is a waste. The next part is that you're going to look for missing pieces of information. So before you start your next fresh start again, you're going to ask the question, what do I have now that I didn't have before? What am I still missing? And like I said, sometimes the missing piece is a different approach, but sometimes it's a different kind of support from somebody. Maybe it's medical help. Maybe it's professional help. Maybe it's admitting to someone who's a loved one in your life, you can't do this alone and you need their help. But you're going to figure out what it is you need. And then the third thing is you have to know when to ask for help, and you ask for it without shame. I waited so long, to talk to my doctor because I had a stupid idea in my head. And this is something I probably could have been done 5 years ago. I could have been on this path 5 years ago. And instead I waited. And by me waiting, the situation got worse. My health got worse. And I, solved it 5 years later in my life. The longer you wait, the longer it is that you're going to wait on getting what it is you want in your life. Being on my own wasn't a virtue. It was an obstacle to me getting healthy. And the help I got didn't replace my effort. It actually made my effort work. Then you want to understand exactly what maintenance looks like. Don't think of things when you go over problems in your life or things that you're trying to solve, that there's no graduation in that. You're just looking to make things more sustainable, easier to achieve, more integrated into your life, more like how you live. My goal in all of this is not to ever give up on eating healthy now. It is now just to make it more and more a part of me. How can I eat better? How can I eat even better than I'm eating today? Although I'm eating pretty darn good today, but I'm looking for integration into my life. And then the last step is maybe you stop asking yourself the question, why do I keep failing at this? Stop doing that to yourself. Instead, start asking yourself, what's missing? What worked well? And what can I do the next time to make this even better? Those questions are going to put you in a whole other place. For me, I spent decades and decades and decades trying to lose weight. And, some people will tell you, oh, you're just not being disciplined enough. I can tell you I was being very disciplined. And, other people will be on your side, and there's some people who won't be on your side. But in the end, I just had a medical issue that was causing me to have insulin resistance that I caused myself, yes. But there were cures for that. And so I got some help. And I think the whole story of this is not about finding the magic solution to anything. It's about taking small steps over the course of time that maybe they didn't work in the past, but suddenly they will. What is the missing piece? Is it that you're trying to do? How can you get back up? And instead of failing, bounce back, bounce forward. And you're not behind in this. You're certainly not running out of chances. You're just not done. And the answer is yet. You're not done yet. And the toolkit that you've been building for years and years and years, start looking at it. Maybe it was invisible to you, but now you'll be able to see, what does that toolkit look like to you? All right, everyone, thanks so much. Appreciate you being out there. You can let me know what struggles you're going to. You can either email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. Put a comment in the chat right here. Love to hear from you. Thanks so much. Have a great day.